Hey guys, Gary J here. We're going to be cutting some limbs down with a pole with a blade on it. And this is the one that I have. And just wanted you to see that maximum sharpness, durability, razor tooth saw. 14 feet in length. It telescopes out. So it's fairly compact in that sense. And a little information there. But I went to, it says cuts up to 8 inches, these saws, and it's amazing how sharp these blades are and how well they cut. And I mean, and I'll show you the one that what it looks like, the one that I got. Okay, this is the limb cutter and pruning rod that I have here. Look at this blade right here. Now this telescopes all the way out to 14 feet, and you just unscrew this and slide it out. And it's got a chain here, kind of like a bicycle chain, and a rope here. Now what this rope does right here, if you pull this rope, and here's a blade right here, and this blade, you see, comes across right here. You can hook a branch and put it in here and just pull this and it will cut that branch. This is really sharp. Cuts up to 1 1/8 inch thick branches with very easily. And notice this blade right here. On this blade right here, it's got a rivet here, well, a bolt here that this just slides into, and it has one screw here that actually holds the blade on. This holds it on right here, but it also holds it on here. If you want to take this blade off, take this screw out, and then slide the blade this way, and this opening is big enough for this to come through. So it's real quick to take the blade off. You don't want to leave the blade on here because this thing has razor tooth saw cutting action. And look at the teeth on this thing. These teeth are wicked. You can't hardly touch this blade without cutting your finger. I mean, it's a wicked design, and it cuts really good. Now, why would you go with something like this? Well, one, I went to the Ace Hardware store, and I was going to buy a pole cutter like this with a chainsaw blade on it and a chainsaw motor. And that, the cheapest one I could find was $600 to $650, and that's for a Stihl, S-T-I-H-L, which is one of the better type of machines you can get, like with chainsaws and leaf blowers. You can repair those. A lot of people will repair them at repair shops, but they won't touch the other stuff. They call them like paper chainsaws. They're cheap made. They won't even deal with them. But anyway, I wasn't going to pay $650 for the chainsaw limb pruner. I thought, well, I went to another place. They had an electric one, and that's not going to work. So I said, well, I'll buy this one. I've used these way in the past, but it's been a long time. And so I bought this one for $85. Now, you can buy them cheaper, but I don't think you're going to get the quality here. See, that's a good quality there. And this is by Corona. The blades, they seem a little flimsy, so you have to be careful with those. But I mean, the cutting power on this thing is unreal. And again, this right here cuts really well too. And this is where you unscrew this a little bit, and you can telescope it out to the length you want. And so what we're going to do is trim some tree limbs up, and I'll show you how that works. Now, one thing too is that we noticed this hook on this right here. Now you can grab branches with that hook and pull them a little bit with that. And again, you got a cord right here, and you pull this cord, and this blade right here will cut up to 1.1/8 thick branches with no trouble at all. And this rope goes all the way down here. It's kind of like a lawnmower handle right here, and you just pull this rope, or you can just grab the rope here, wrap it around your hand, and pull this to pull this part right here, which does your cutting right here. And I'll show you how that works. Okay, we're going to show you how this hook works right here. You hook it across the limb that you want to cut, and just make sure it's pulled down. And you grab your rope here, which would be close to the end of the handle, and you just pull your rope here, and that blade cuts into this limb right here. Okay. See, that's a clean cut right there. It doesn't take a lot of energy to do that at all either, to cut with this blade right here. I don't know if you can see the edge. It's got a pretty good edge on it. So you can cut the limbs that way for pruning. And I notice it works real good if you've got vines that are on your trees and you want to cut those vines. You just simply grab your rope and pull it, and you can cut those vines up the tree. Again, you got to reach your 14 feet with this, and I'll show you how well it cuts on limbs and stuff like that. Okay, this is tree number 1, and you got these limbs here coming out, and you got some up here. The worst thing to me, like if you're on a riding lawnmower and you got these limbs hanging down, you run into those limbs on the riding lawnmower. And these limbs have spiders and everything else in them. And so you don't want to run into those things. And looking at that limb, I say that limb's probably about 11 feet up, maybe 12. So we'd have to cut this limb up here to get rid of this limb coming down, see. And this makes a real quick job of it. This thing is almost as fast as the chainsaw. Okay guys, I unscrewed this part right here, and I telescoped out the blade. And this is the limb we want to cut right up here. And when you're cutting a limb, if 12 o'clock straight up, you want to be cutting at about a 2 o'clock angle. You don't want to be cutting the limb underneath it because it's going to fall on your head, right? So you want about 2 o'clock, say 12, 1, 2 o'clock. So you telescope it out, and the weight of this pole, which is not heavy, it's I don't know. I have to look up the weight, but it feels like it's about 4 pounds to me, or 4.5 pounds. It's really not heavy. So, excuse me, I think I swallowed a gnat. But we put their blade up here, and you want to try to get close to the tree when you do that. So I've got my blade right there, and that limb is fairly thick. Again, you see the limb coming down right here. That's a pretty good size limb. And let's see how many strokes it takes to, and I'm going to be doing this with one hand because I'm holding the camera with the other hand. So many strokes this takes. Now note that blade has kind of a curve to it, and again, this is a modified type of saw blade. It's not like the old stuff in the 50s and 60s. These things right here, you can't even touch that blade without it hardly cutting. So let's see how this works on cutting, how long it takes. Okay, that's through that limb right there. And we'll look at it a little bit closer. And because I'm using one hand, I only use half of this blade instead of the whole blade. Because I want you to see, if you look at the counter on this tape right here, you'll see it probably only took me, what, 25 seconds, 30 seconds, and I only used half that blade. But if you use the whole blade, it would cut a lot faster. And I'm letting the weight of the stick do the cutting, okay? So, again, you got this hook right here, and I can take this hook and grab this limb and pull it. You don't want to use your blade. Your blade's kind of fragile to me, so. So you see how thick this is right here, and this is a live limb right here. But right there, it's kind of oblong, but it's oval shape. But that's close to 2 inches right there in length, and it cut that limb. I don't know without looking at the counter, but probably in 30 seconds. You can't beat that. I mean, you could use a chainsaw type one for $600, $650, and have all that money in it. Or you can have this for 85 bucks is what I paid for it. You can probably find it for about 65. But there's a lot of them on the market. But the key, I think, is to make sure you get this kind of looking blade. I think that's going to make all the difference in the world. See how wicked that blade looks? Again, this is Corona razor tooth saw, full back cutting, and this arc in it helps when you pull to cut deep too. But it really amazes me how quick this thing cuts limbs down. I mean, almost as fast as a chainsaw. And again, you're only using the weight of the pole. Just use the weight of the pole. Don't bear down on it or anything like that, and let it do the cutting. But that'll give you an idea. If it only took 22 seconds for that, then you can cut all this stuff, especially little stuff here, like right in front of me, in just a second. Now, that hook that we looked at with the blade, you can just cut this stuff off real easy with it. But I'm just trying to save you some money so you don't spend a lot of money on a chainsaw. And chainsaw is real dangerous because when you're up, if it kicks back, like don't ever get on a ladder and try to cut with those chainsaws or chainsaw pruning units, because if they get stuck, and they'll bind on the limb, it'll kick back, and it kicks back, it'll knock you off a ladder. So you better have your feet planted on the ground when you cut. And so this works really well. Okay, we've got a limb right here, and we've got a hook on it. And now that we've got a hook on, all we got to do is take this rope right here and pull on this rope. Okay, let's see, right there. We pull on this rope right here, and that blade comes out and cuts. Now I'm doing this with one hand, so. Now that came out, since you're holding the rope, you're holding the blade too on the pole, so it can't really go anywhere. But that cut that really well. And this limb here, you can see it's a decent size, and that's at least an inch right there. So it only takes a few seconds to pull on that rope. Now, if you're not holding a camera in your hand, you can do this a whole lot easier. But that's kind of what I wanted to show you is that. Okay, this is tree number 1. And you got these limbs here coming out, and you got some up here. The worst thing to me, like if you're on a riding lawnmower and you got these limbs hanging down, you run into those limbs. Okay guys, this is the tree after we cut the limbs on it. And that part of the tree is about 14 feet tall, where I've cut all the limbs off of it. You can get carried away with this pole saw. Okay, so be careful with that. But and probably took, if you went straight and just did this without trying to film it, 5 minutes, 6 minutes at the most to cut all these limbs off. I mean, it's just so quick. Can't believe. I mean, I would rather have this than a chainsaw. Okay, we're resting our pole saw blade on this limb right here. This limb is coming down here. Actually, it's almost touching the ground. And it's an eyesore and it's in the way. So let's see how long it takes to cut this limb using one hand and holding the camera here, just to give you an idea how quick this pole saw is with this particular brand. I don't know about the other brands, but I know about this blade right here. And we'll count in seconds, like 1 1,000, 2 1,000, okay? All right, this will be 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. Now that was 14 seconds to cut down that limb. And that limb is, looks like the end of it's probably about 2 inches thick at the very end. I don't know if you can see that or not, but we'll look at that. Okay. This limb right here that we cut is close to 2 inches thick, and a decent length there. And it only took 14 seconds to cut it down. That's about as quick as you're going to do a chainsaw pole cutter. And chainsaw pole cutter is a lot heavier because you're holding a whole chainsaw motor too. So I recommend a good pole saw. And this pole saw is worth its weight in gold for what I'm using it for. Saved me a ton of money already. And it makes it so easy and quick. Okay guys, we've got this another limb. Now this is a good 2 inch thick limb right here. It's not thicker. And we've got our pole saw blade resting on it. We've got it at a 2 o'clock angle. Remember, 12 straight up and then 1 2 o'clock. And the better that you can hold it up higher, you got the weight of the pole and everything on it, it's going to make it easier to cut. And this is a pretty good sized limb right here. All this hanging on the other side. This part right here you see. And it becomes a problem. So, let's see how long it takes to cut this limb. And again, this is a decent sized limb right here. And we'll count like seconds, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 8, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Okay, 35. Okay, 35 seconds to cut this one. And this one is, this is a big heavy one right here. That's about 3 inches long, about 2 inches across right there. This is a good sized limb right here. And so, all right, 30 seconds. or so, you cut this big limb right here. And that's with one hand. I'm just pulling and pushing the blade with one hand because I've got this camera in the other hand holding that. So I'm just going back and forth using the weight of the pole. Again, that's really nice right there. So, and the pole is not that heavy. I think it weighs like 4 pounds. I have to look it up because it don't feel like 5 pounds to me. It feels like 4. Could be wrong, but it's very light, especially if you can use 2 hands. Like I said, I'm just trying to show you how this thing works. And get these limbs trimmed up while you can. I've got a mess here, which all these trees over here I've cut the limbs on. And the only problem by cutting all these limbs is like, you got to get them up, right? So I'm going to take the tractor and try to push all these limbs up and make it easier, you know, to gather them all up. But just trying to save you some money, guys. Get you a pole saw for cutting these limbs. Quick and easy. And again, save yourself $600 from buying a nice one like a Stihl. The reason I mentioned Stihl is called like S-T-I-H-L. Stihl makes some of the best motors there is out there. And most time, like with a chainsaw by Stihl, chainsaw motors, all of them have problems with the carburetor getting clogged up or using the wrong kind of fuel in it. Gasoline melts the plastic lines and they always get gummed up and messed up. You can go and buy a brand new Stihl carburetor for a lot of those motors for like $20 and replace that, and it's a real simple fix. But if you buy one of these paper chainsaws, which is like $100 or something like that, and I bought those. Craftsman made a lot of them. A lot of people make them, but nobody who works on chainsaws wants to work on what they call paper chainsaws because they're made to run until they stop and then you just throw them away and buy another one. But if you want something to last, get a Stihl or there's a lot of other brands out there too. I can't think of them right now, but there are several brands that are really, Husqvarna is another one that's really, really good, but expensive too. But if you want something that's going to last you for years and years, that's the way to go. Thanks for watching, guys. Gary J.